Do you want simple steps to level up your mind, body, and spirit, or encouragement as you navigate the challenges of motherhood? Or maybe you need a dose of hope to achieve that goal? Then you've tuned in to the right podcast. This is Keep Blooming, and I'm your host, Liz Montigny. Each week, I'll encourage you to drop the hustle mentality for hope and act on the dreams God has put on your heart. I'm a licensed Ziegler life coach. I've created a theater ministry, and like you, I'm doing all the things as a Catholic, a wife, and a mom to 3 boys. So let's get growing and keep blooming. Hello, welcome to episode 28 of Keep Blooming. I'm your host, Liz Montigny. Today, we are going to talk about reclaiming your time. Oh, for so many of us, time is a concern, right? We feel like we don't have enough of it. We feel like we're not using it productively. We can't manage it well. Or maybe we're thinking too much about living in the past. This is such a hot topic, so I thought I'd devote some time to it. And before we dive into all of that and some strategies for living with intention and you're keeping the right mindset around time, we are going to hit our Lectio Divina for today, which is Hebrews chapter 4, verses 15 through 16. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who is similarly been tested in every way, yet without sin. So let us confidently approach the throne of grace to receive mercy and to find grace for timely help. Yep, Jesus, he knows it all. He can sympathize with us. He has compassion for us. He knows our weaknesses. And he's been through Calvary, okay? He was nailed to the cross, but he rose again. And so going to him first, confidently approaching the throne of grace, the throne of gifts. Yeah, I want some of that. And receive his mercy. And just know that it's always at the right time. He may make you wait. And I have some more thoughts on waiting that I have been pondering, and that is an episode for another time. But his time is always correct. So we will come back to that at the end of our little chat here about reclaiming your time. But this is always a hot topic in my coaching sessions. And I want to look into this idea that, time is actually a mindset in a sense. Christy Wright writes, she wrote a book called Take Back Your Time. And she talks about this being a mindset time, okay? She has a great quote that, kind of encompasses the whole book. And she says, life balance is about doing the right things at the right time. And you get to decide what's right for you. I think this is really key here because I think a lot of our anxiety and challenges are put upon ourselves because we think we're supposed to be doing things in a certain way, that there's some magic formula for this. But this is your life, right? These are your relationships. This is your career. These are your children, whatever it is. And so you have to create the life that you would love to be living. And that's going to look different for somebody else. So we really have to think about living with intention. And you have to be really clear on the things that are important to you. That's why when I work with my clients, we always start there. What is your vision for your life? What do you want to be known for? And yeah, maybe, sometimes it can be a little hard for people to start there, but we need to know what we're aiming for. And we need to be clear on that so then you can build a life around the most important things. So let's talk a little bit about building a life around the most important things. And what could that look like for you? So if you're a bit stressed about thinking, hey, I don't have enough time to do all these things, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm an entrepreneur, I have this coaching practice, I have a theater ministry. How does that all work together? And I have a podcast, right? Speaking of time, I've been doing this for almost 6 months now. I hope that's been good time for you. But I've been really enjoying it. And so, um, what is the most important thing, right? So when we're thinking that we don't have enough time, I really encourage you to sit down with a pen and paper. And there's a great exercise you can do of just getting it all out onto paper so you can see it in front of you. And you can fold the paper in half, like, columns, or just draw it, whatever you want to do. But basically, on the left side, uh, write what your typical day is. Like, how are you using your time? I mean, down to 15-minute blocks if you can. Get really nitty gritty about it, about how you're using your time, and be honest with yourself. How much time are you scrolling or binging, binge watching something or whatever it may be? Be really clear on that. And on the right side, write out what you would like your ideal day to be. And I think this is a really powerful exercise to have in front of you. I think I may have heard it somewhere on another podcast, but it is so powerful because you can really see where you're wasting time, where you could delegate. You could also get serious with yourself and see if this is really something that you should be doing. Okay. And Christy Wright talks about this in her book as well. So that's a great exercise to do because it's right in front of you. And then it's not just some thought that you have that you don't have any time. Well, actually, you do. You're just not using it in a way that suits the life you want to be living. So take some time and do that, right? How your current day is going, what that looks like, and what you'd like your ideal day to be, and see what you need to change to get it to that ideal day. Another great thing to think about if you are concerned about being productive all the time. I know this is something that I've had to really work on intentionally taking a break and rest, because I was one of those people who always thought, I need to be doing something with my time. And, God actually created us to have rest as well. Okay. I mean, he rested on the seventh day. So, okay. And, it's all in scripture that we are to rest as well. And just to keep in mind that rest is part of productivity, because you can't give if you have nothing to give, if you're totally exhausted or not even inspired, right? And so if you're not getting enough rest, whether that be physical rest, sleep, or even exercise, walking in nature, if you're not getting enough of that, you're not going to have the energy to create. So there are all different types of rest. I talked about the physical. There's also creative, sometimes I think, especially as moms, I know I went through a phase when the kids were really young where, because, you're needed so much, that I kind of forgot the fun things I'd like to do. And by that, I mean like hobbies and stuff like that. So in things that you enjoy doing. So take some time and think, when was the last time I went for a hike, or when was the last time I did this thing that I really love? And if it's been a long time, you're going to want to make an appointment with yourself. So rest just comes in many forms, but you need it to rejuvenate and you need it to be creative. And, I know you're listening and maybe you're like, hey, I'm not a creative person. But we're all creative because we were created to create. But you may be thinking, I'm not talented or something, but that's not true. That's just simply not true. We're all talented in some way. So make sure you're leaving room for you to be inspired by life. The other point I want to check on is managing your time. There's a lot of, I've gone back and forth on, deep work versus, quick sprints. And I think there's room for both. And here's what I mean by that. So on my last retreat last year, one of the things that I came home with was realizing that, mindful, intentional time and deep working in one area will actually bring me further than trying to do 50,000 things at once. So I really took a look at that, and I really pared down some of the tasks I was doing, even, some of the things I was volunteering with. So there's that. Okay. But then there's also the idea of, I think we underestimate what we can get done in like 15 minutes. Like, honestly, like if you are working in a focused manner for 15 and 20 minutes on a project, wow, you can get pretty far. So you may want to implement a strategy called Power Hour. You can break it down into 15-minute chunks, or maybe 20-minute chunks, or, whatever it may be. But, taking that project or that goal and working on a specific part of it for just 15 minutes a day, by the end of the week, if you're doing that at least 4 times a week, by the end of the week, you're going to be an hour ahead of nothing, right? An hour ahead of where you were when you were just thinking about it and being overwhelmed. So I think a lot of the time we forget how much we can accomplish just taking things step by step. And by not 10xing it, we don't burn ourselves out and feel like we're failures. Okay. And that's why I think it's really important, especially when we're talking about reclaiming our time and managing it and realizing what we're doing with it. I think it's super important to keep track of your progress. And I talk about this a lot when I talk about goal setting. But, take yourself at the end of the week and just look back at your week and what have you done and with your goals and how far have you come, and, just celebrate the little victories that add up to big changes. The next point I want to share is, it's called mind share, and it's something I work on with my clients when we're talking about the mental spoke on the wheel of life, which are some points I talked about in my last few podcast episodes. But mind share is, if you think of 100% of your mind share, right? And that's divvied up into how much are you thinking about things in the past? How much are you thinking about things in the present? And how much are you thinking about things in the future? So if you are constantly mentally hanging out in the past, guess what? You're not present and you're not thinking about future growth because you're still worried about something that happened that you can't even change. So when this comes up with my clients, we recognize that the past is a fact. It happened. Can't go back and change it, but what did you learn from it? Because there's always something that you learn from it. And, what is going to help you kind of snap out of that thinking? Because a lot of the times that's a mental habit that we get sucked into. So that may be self-talk. You have to build up a routine of affirmations and self-talk to help get you out of that. Or maybe it's journaling or whatever it may be. But if you're spending a lot of time mentally, spending a lot of time in the past, you're going to find it very hard to move forward. And then, of course, the percentage of being in the present, that's mostly where you want to be. Okay. Because what is in the present? The current moment, your relationships, anything that you're working on, it's all there. So, as much as we can get there is key, right? And that's where God wants us to be, really. And then, of course, the future. I mean, we do need to be thinking about that as well, because oftentimes many of our goals are future. Maybe they're not long term, but maybe they're 3 to 6 months out or something like that, as opposed to years out. But it's all there. So that's a really nice exercise too, because sometimes we don't realize how much we're hanging out in the past. So do that little mind share exercise of just thinking about how much of my thoughts are in the past, present, or future. And just jot that down for yourself. So, and I'm such a big proponent of writing all this stuff down, and I'm always saying it on the podcast, because once you have it in front of you, number one, it's out of your head. Okay. So there's some relief there. But number two, it just brings so much clarity. And oftentimes when you have it on the paper, instead of ruminating over it in your head, you can very clearly see patterns. You can also, sometimes the answer is just right in front of you and you just didn't realize it. So that's why I'm always big about writing things out. So, I really think there's a great quote from Fulton Sheen: all our anxieties relate to time. Yeah, a lot, so much, right? So, there's so much in scripture about being present, and there's so much in scripture about waiting on God, and there's so much about his timing is perfect. And sometimes we feel like it's not. And especially if we're suffering or we're really waiting on something we want, and we just don't understand why not now. But you have to remember, God has the bird's eye view, and he sees the bigger picture for your life and who he wants you to become. So his timing is always perfect. And if we go to him first with all these anxieties, and even on this topic of reclaiming your time and being intentional with it, we're going to have so much more peace. So let me know in comments, or drop me a little reply on this podcast to see if you tried any of these strategies. And speaking of time, we are running out of time on early bird savings on my destination retreat, Restore 3.0, for the third year in a row. I'll be returning to San Miguel, Azores, with women who want to reach their goals with grace instead of hustle. And we are doing that on a gorgeous island called Sao Miguel, and it's the Azores. It's part of Portugal, if you don't know. It's a 4.5-hour flight from Boston, which is pretty incredible. We'll be there for the first week of October. And once you get there, your boutique hotel, which is a villa by the sea, and meals are all taken care of for you. You'll have masterminds with me where we'll dive into all this stuff. You'll also have the opportunity to participate in soul core sessions to stretch your stress away, to the rosary, to the prayers of the rosary, which is really powerful and beautiful. And then, our travel planner, who's a professional travel planner and totally knows that island so well, will be taking us on all these amazing excursions together. So it's a really transformative and beautiful week, and you are worth the investment. So I encourage you, if this is something that you've been curious about, now is the time to book it, because Saturday, April 29th, the early bird savings of $500, which is excellent, that expires. So get signed up by Saturday, April 29th. Can you sign up after that time? Of course you can, but I like to reward decisive women, so go ahead and sign up now. All right, so let's revisit Hebrews chapter 4, and this is verses 15 and 16. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who is similarly been tested in every way, yet without sin. So let us confidently approach the throne of grace to receive mercy and to find grace for timely help. Yep, go to him, my friends. He should be your first stop in life, okay? And you can take all of this to him about your time and your energy and your rest and where your mind's at, right? And he knows it all. Okay. And ask him what the next right step is for you. All right, let's get growing and keep blooming. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Keep Blooming. Tune in every Wednesday for a dose of hope and encouragement. You can find this podcast on Anchor, Spotify, and Google and Apple Podcasts. To be the first to know about my upcoming retreats and latest offerings, be sure to hop onto my email list. Have a wonderful week, and remember to keep blooming.